The secret Chinese technique for painting hair I learned from Bilibili can be applied to just about any hairstyle. And in this video, I'll be demonstrating this and providing crucial knowledge and tips such that you'll be able to easily paint whatever hairstyle you desire using just a few simple steps. After finishing this video, you'll be able to truly understand how to apply the Chinese technique in any situation. So from my previous video, I made it seem like this magic formula would only work for anime hairstyles, but in fact it can work for semi-realism styles as well. There's just a few key things you need to do if you want to paint semi-realism hair with this technique, and I'll be demonstrating that with this painting. As a reminder from last episode, or if you haven't seen the previous video, this is the magic formula that I learned that allows you to paint basically any hair you wish. So firstly, we have the big shadow again. Just thinking about where the direction of the light source should be and applying it to the parts of the hair that would be facing away from the light source. Importantly, you can see in the reference that the shadow doesn't really look like this. Like, you can tell that all of it is turning away from the light and it should be in shadow, but there's not a harsh everything is in shadow like we're painting here. You even have some bits at the back that are in light. But it is still important to do this step just as you normally would, and to paint it all in shadow even if the reference isn't quite like it, and you're just going to erase part of it anyways. Because this is how we develop our ability to use this formula, and is how we can start to learn how to use this technique even without a reference. Anyways, now try to add a bit more variation to the shape of the shadow. You can see that I loosely followed my rough sketch when removing the shadows, such that the top parts of the clumps had light to them. Also, use the smudging tool with a soft airbrush to blend a little bit. Anyways, now we're on to the second step, which is to paint the transitioning color, otherwise known as the terminator color. Pretty straightforward. Think of it as one big line, but also it follows the outline of the shadow a bit. Like, you don't have to paint it all the way here, for example. The third step is where we add a lot more definition and is where you add the dark shadows you're probably already dying to add at this point. And remember to try and paint these shadows as triangular-like shapes, rather than four-sided shapes. But we'll be adding a lot more shadows and definition later on. This step is mainly for the really big and obvious shadows that you'd be able to see even if you squinted your eyes really hard. This will help guide us when rendering. Now we're on to the sharp highlights. This is probably the first step where there's a pretty big difference between how we paint this when doing anime hair versus semi-realism. To start off, it's the same. We simply do a big broad curved brushstroke and then carve out some of the sections. And I also painted some smaller highlights on the other side as well. But now the key difference is that we really make sure to have this highlight sort of blend into the hair itself, and make this highlight be sort of hair textured. This is because in semi-realism, you rarely ever see super sharp, pure white highlights like you would in anime. Now it's time to add some glow to the hair. This step is important to add some more variety to the hair, and just to make the hair look better in general. And the color to use for adding this glow is the skin color, because this is how we can give the hair a very slight impression of see-throughness. But I also added some glow with a decently saturated red/orangish color. Now for the last step, and this step is really what makes all the difference, since this is where we really make this a semi-realism style of hair. For semi-realism hair, I've basically just slapped on an extra thing to do for this step, which is to add sharp details. This will make a huge difference, as you'll see. This is because the key defining difference between anime hair and a semi-realism hair is simply the amount of fine details and the shape of the hair. And I actually used the knowledge I learned from my hard brush only video in order to make the hair more detailed. Basically, I just spammed a whole bunch of little sharp lines in order to add detail. And you can see that this had quite a significant impact on the look of the hair. And I'd say that this is probably the single most important step/difference between painting semi-realism hair and anime hair. which is just spamming a whole bunch of detail. But importantly, these should be sharp detail. If you did this with soft strokes, it would just look really weird and muddy. And then I thought this bit looked a little bit out of place, so I decided to remove it. Totally not because I was too lazy to render it or anything. And as a bonus little step, I altered the outline of the hair a bit, such that there was a few more loose hair strands, and the shape was less rigid. And now we have the final result. Pretty simple for this type of hairstyle, right? I think this formula really helps to add concrete steps to the process, such that it can make something that might otherwise be really hard to paint turn into something much easier to paint. So I got a few requests on my last video to also show how to use this technique on male hair. Okay, it was one request. But anyways, it's important to know how to use this on male hair as well. I say that there isn't really too much difference between painting female hair and male hair with this technique. There's just a few important differences and key points to watch out for, which I'll get to. First step, up to you how you would like to choose to lay down the shadow. I'm doing the painting without a reference, and I've decided to just lay down the depth shadow like this, such that the light source is like this. Then blur the shadow edge a bit and add some variety. Then we do the transitioning colors, same as before. Now that I've already gone over the steps, I'll be going over stuff a lot faster. Mostly just really simple shadows here. Just thinking about how the hairs are overlapping with each other and the shadows that this would make, considering the direction of the light source. And you can see that now that we've very explicitly painted where the light source is coming from using our big shadow, it is now super easy to visualize everything. Sharp highlights here are also the same technique, and I'm adding it to both sides as well, since I'm going for a more top-down light. I don't have any skin here, so I just picked a sort of random skin color, but I tried to go more saturated, because an important thing to watch out for is that for this color of hair, if you're using a pale skin color, then they will mix together to form a more grayish color, which doesn't look that great. So I picked a more saturated color to get some more color variation. Okay, at this stage, it looks sort of cartoony, which is fine if that's what you're going for. But now I'm going to be adding a lot more extra detail and stuff so I can get a more rendered look. At this stage, for the definition shadows, what I did was I used this square brush on a low opacity and just painted these hair clumps. I overlapped my strokes and just aimed for a subtle change to make it more detailed. And now I'll be doing the bonus steps just like I talked about in my previous video. So firstly, I added some more strong highlights to the hair. I'd have been dying to do this because I felt the whole time that the hair didn't really feel like there was a light coming from above. Anyways, I did this by blocking in the light roughly with a round brush and then smudging it in such a way such that there was a faint hair-like texture to the highlights. The next step was the rim light. Basically just adding sharp highlights from behind to give more separation to the hair. Then I duplicated the whole hair, played around with some gradient maps, and set the layer mode to soft light. And this gave some more color variation and pop to the hair. And now we're done. Pretty easy again, I'd say. And this was done without reference as well. And I absolutely suck at painting without any reference, but I still think it turned out decent, all because of the formula. So now for the final hair, I wanted to demonstrate another female anime hair. Once again, this was done without a reference, so big shadow again. But with this type of hair shape and the lighting that I was going for, I did sort of deviate from the clean, one big stroke type of color feel that I did previously. For the transitioning color, this was kind of weird and hard to implement. This is because for this hair color, it's kind of hard to pick a vibrant color that's in the same hue range with it still looking natural. In the end, I picked this color, but it did feel a little off compared to the other hairs. Depth shadow, sort of just the same thing again. Sharp highlights here was kind of weird and hard to find the right position for. Like, you want to mainly keep it in the light, but in this case, if you only keep it in the light, then the rest of the hair doesn't really benefit from the extra perceived curvature that the highlight brings. But I settled with this. Glow in this case had the same problem to keep note of as the previous hair, where picking the skin color may just end up making the hair look more grey. So again, I picked a more saturated color. Definition shadows, same thing, where I tried to make the hair have more perceived detail by spamming a bunch of brushstrokes and blurring these. Now we're onto the bonus steps. This time, firstly was a rim light using the add blend mode, and then I made the light source a lot more prominent again, and then some more color variation, and bam, done. So this was another 3 examples of hairs that can be painted using the Chinese technique. Hopefully, from seeing all these different examples, you've understood how to apply this technique in any situation. If you learned something from this video, then I would greatly appreciate a like or sub. It means a lot. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching.